Welcome to Unlocking Vulnerability, the podcast that explores what vulnerability really looks like in everyday life. I'm Helen, and in each episode I'm joined by a different guest who'll bring their unique insight and perspectives from across the vulnerability space. We'll discuss the realities behind vulnerability and what it takes to respond when people need additional support. We're glad to have you here, so grab a cup of tea and let's get started. Welcome back to Unlocking Vulnerability with me, Helen Pettifer. Before we begin this podcast, I do want to share that we will be discussing the topic of suicide, which I recognise may be upsetting for many people. In 2024, there were 6,190 suicides in England and Wales, and for every death by suicide, at least 135 people are exposed and potentially impacted. In November 2025, the UK's first standard on suicide awareness and prevention at work was launched by BSI. The standard supports organisations to identify and manage suicide risk in the workplace, have confident, consistent and compassionate conversations about suicide, and embed clear processes to support and communicate with staff and families after there's been a suicide loss. In essence, this standard can and will save lives. Since its publication, BS 30480 has been downloaded over 9,000 times in more than 100 countries. And that's just at current when we're recording the session today. So I anticipate there's going to be a lot more over the coming months and years. Today, I'm privileged to be joined by Lachie Humphreys, the Lead Standards Development Manager for Occupational Health and Safety at BSI, and Marcus Long, Chief Executive at IIOA. Hello, Lachie and Marcus. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
Hi, Helen.
Hi, Helen.
I'm looking forward to our discussion today. So before we get started in our discussion, do you want to start by just giving us a brief introduction to yourself? So Lachie, we'll start with you first.
Perfect. Thanks, Helen. And thank you so much for having us on today. I'm very excited for the conversation this morning. So as Helen said, I'm Lachie Humphreys. I'm Lead Standards Development Manager at BSI. So in my role, I manage the work program of occupational health and safety standards, which are globally recognized. They're 45,001 is the name of the series. And they're really an international benchmark for good practice in the workplace. So the family of OH&S standards includes traditional health and safety, which is the flagship standard. But in recent years, it's developed to include things like psychological health and safety, very relevant for today, remote working, which is also relevant, infectious disease management, menopause, menstrual health, OHS and climate change. So all of those are internationally published or in development. And then also as part of my role, I do some national work as well with BSI. And I've been very privileged for the last 2 years to work on this new standard, BS 30480, on suicide in the workplace as the project manager and the committee manager to what was a very large group of experts and organisations from around the UK that worked on the project.
Brilliant, yes. It's been an amazing project to be involved in, hasn't it? Absolutely. Thank you, Lachie. And Marcus, over to you.
Yes, hi. So I am the Chief Executive of IIOA, which its full name is the Independent International Organisation for Assurance. And what on earth does that mean? Well, basically, it's a trade association of members who go out and check people against standards. They will audit them, they will certify them, they will validate and verify their data. They will look at the core of a standard and check whether an organisation is conforming to that particular standard. And that is incredibly pertinent to the discussion that we're going to have today. Prior to that, I was also actually working for BSI on the standards development side of BSI. So I've spent about 20 years in the assurance sector, looking at spreading the word about how standards and conformity make things better wherever they are. And that becomes incredibly important when we introduce where the standard actually came from. Prior to that, I've been in a range of different industries, the retail sector, the telecoms industry, the rail industry, the automotive industry. And that's been incredibly beneficial to really understand how standards can be used by a whole range of different people, and how it doesn't matter about the culture of a particular industry or sector, they will all benefit from the use of standards. So that's the kind of half the story of where we've got to today.
Brilliant. Thank you, Marcus. And I know you're going to share more about your story in just a moment. So thank you both for joining me today. Lachie, as you said, it's been a large group of people involved in bringing this standard to life, and it's been a pleasure for me to be part of one of the working groups and helping to share my insights on suicide within the project work. Marcus, I know that for you this work is deeply personal. Do you feel comfortable sharing your story and what led you to sort of getting this standard off the ground?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to, because I think that we talk about, I think there are two sides to where I came to with the idea for the standard. The one side of it was the industry that I work in, the assurance industry I work in. But like many people who have become involved in suicide prevention, I came into it from a deeply personal place, where in October 2020, my youngest son, Adam, took his life. It was a out of the blue thing. We knew Adam had a few issues, but we weren't aware of any of the kind of extent that they were that would lead him to make the decision that he did. So from that, I kind of always knew, right, almost at that very time, I found out that Adam had taken his life, that there was going to be a silver lining to it. There was going to be something that positive that could come out of losing Adam. The crazy thing was, it took me about 3 years to work out what was indeed possibly the very simplest of answers, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe the time in coming to that solution, and the fact that it was really simple, maybe is one of the indications about why it's getting the success that you've already talked about, Helen, in terms of the numbers and the geographical spread that we're seeing of the standard so far. And that was very simply that what the assurance industry does and what standards do is, wherever an organization is addressing a particular issue, a standard can help make it better. Doesn't matter where you are today. We look at the idea of a standard of people being able to improve the position that they're in, whether that relates to the reduction in greenhouse gases, or a response to climate change, or an improvement of quality, or the reduction of health and safety issues within an organization. Standards, of which there are tens of thousands, can help people get better. So the thought was, well, why on earth can't we do that with suicide? As you said, we have these horrible statistics, not just in England and Wales, not just in the rest of the UK, but across the globe as well. We have this blight that we have consistently failed to address to any great way. So why not look at something new, like the idea of standards, to do that? So I started the journey by talking to a number of standards development organizations in different parts of the globe, talking to ISO as well, and talking to BSI. And one of the major inspirations that BSI provided was one of the standards that Lachie has already spoken about, and that was the standard for the menopause and menstrual health. And it just really struck me that subject is often seen by many as a taboo subject, one they don't want to talk about. Some people don't even want to accept it exists. And bang, if that isn't a description of what the debate and discussion about suicide, then I don't know what is. So we started having the discussions with BSI. BSI was really warm to the idea. And so we kicked off with various different groups and discussions, the first one of which back in the beginning of 23, was it? Was it?
Yeah, February.
February 23. Thank you. The sands of time are disappearing, aren't they? And we held a workshop at the House of Commons. And whilst it was at the House of Commons, it was already an indication of the diversity of this committee. We had a huge range of people from industry, people from the healthcare system, people from academia, people with lived experience, people who were doing things about suicide prevention already, people who were interested in doing it afresh. And that really exciting event really provided the inspiration to take the thing forward. We then fine-tuned things with some focus groups to say exactly what should the standard look like. And then a day I will always remember where BSI finally announced that not only would they develop the standard, but also it would be a free issue standard as well. And that was just a fabulous day to get us going. And the standard took off from there. I think Lachie's going to describe a bit more about how the standard is put together, but just an amazing bunch of people that have been involved in the standard. And I will never be able to find enough words in quantity and quality to thank those incredible people for putting together what I believe is just a brilliant standard that is so useful, it is so practical, and it just opens up the conversation for people. I think the one other thing I'd say about why a standard is important and why a BSI standard is important is because the idea of producing a standard about suicide prevention, suicide awareness, will be a really alien concept to a lot of people. A lot of people might be aware of the issue of suicide, but they're not actually aware of the issue of standards. And likewise, there might be many people who are aware of standards that still have a slightly ancient view of BSI and standards, that they're all about the Industrial Revolution or something like that. And actually, that they're not aware of the fact that standards can provide some fabulous solutions for a whole range of different things like this. So what we do is we talk to one group and say, why don't you use a standard? You may never have even heard of them before. And then we say to another group who use standards, are you aware of the fact there's a standard in a very different area here? And so having the name of BSI is providing us with some real value in talking to a whole bunch of new people who would never have thought about the idea of using a suicide prevention standard like the standard we have here.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you so much for sharing your story as well. And I completely agree with regards to the standards and the topic of the standard that we're discussing today. And I think as well is really highlighting how organisations are wanting to talk about these difficult topics within their workplaces. So even just the fact that we've got the menopause and the menstrual health. That's starting to open up these conversations within workplaces because our we can't differentiate our personal lives to our work life. They overlap. So I think it is important that these standards are recognising that we are going to bring all of ourselves to work.
Yeah. And the first thing the standard does, this might sound a bit weird, but it just exists. Even if you don't open beyond the front cover, it's got people to go, oh, okay, right, we can talk about the subject. And we all of us know in this community that just getting people to talk about it is a significant big step. So having BSI with that name and having that standard, just the very existence of it. I know that sounds a bit kind of deeply philosophical, but actually just that first step.
Yes.
And once you've hit that first step, it becomes easier to take the second one and do something about it.
Yeah. Open the standard and read it.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the next step, isn't it? Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you, Marcus. So Lachie, I'm going to come to you then. So Marcus approached you. We had that great discussion back 3 years ago. How was this standard developed? Who was involved? What did the process look like to get it to where it is today?
Yeah, it was, well, as Marcus said, it started off with that workshop that we ran. And the reason that we did that is because we got this proposal and we thought, this is a huge topic. It's a really sensitive topic, and it's one that you can come at from a lot of different angles. And there's a lot already kind of happening in the UK. So there's lots happening in different sectors. There's government strategies, there's advocacy groups, there's charities, all doing great work in this space. So we thought, again, so the usual way of assessing a proposal at BSI is that it comes in and we give it to that expert committee to assess it. In this case, we thought it didn't really fit directly under occupational health and safety, that we needed to go and consult a little bit more widely before we took any more steps. So we used our existing standards network, which is quite vast. And then we also cold invited really anyone with an interest in being a part of it, as Marcus said. And it was a really good, rich discussion in that first workshop. And I think the feeling in the room really was that there was a gap here for practical workplace guidance. And this could be the thing, and BSI could be the facilitator to bring together a document like this with consistency across the UK. So yeah, to do that, it's really important, obviously, to involve as many stakeholders as possible. So at that point, we already were thinking we need to bring together departmental government, but also parliamentary government. So from the very start, we had support from Liz Twist, MP, which was great. She's been a really excellent supporter and advocate for the project the whole way through. And we also had the Department of Health and Social Care from the start as well. By the time we finished the project, we also had Dr. Neil Hudson, MP, Baroness Merrin, who's the Minister for Mental Health, as well. So we took it through those kind of preliminary stages, as Marcus said, and then we were ready to set it up as a whole new work area. We thought, we've got so much interest in this project and so much expertise to bring together. It will be its own new committee that will sit with BSI. It turned into quite a large committee, as I said, and we set it up with a specific structure where we would have a wide group of stakeholders kind of sitting at the top, and then a drafting panel underneath that would do the bulk of the work on the preliminary draft. And then we have a comms and engagement group that Marcus leads as well, which was working on kind of raising awareness and making sure that we had a comms strategy, and we were constantly stakeholder mapping and making sure that we were bringing in everyone that needed to be there. So by the time the standard was ready for public consultation, which is kind of halfway through the development process, we had more than 75 individuals and organizations sitting on the committee, which included organizations like the Society of Occupational Medicine, the Association of Mental Health First Aiders, City of London, Transport for London, National Grid, Mates in Mind. We had lots of members representing small organizations or their individual expertise. We had academic research, and of course, and really importantly, we had lived experience as well. By the time we got to publication, we also had support from Samaritan's Mind and the New Royal Foundation. So it's really been an iterative engagement process to make sure that we were really engaging with everyone that needed to be involved in the project all the way through. And as far as actually developing the standard, BSI has quite a rigorous development process and a governance structure that we work with for all standards. So that involves quite a high level of consultation and feedback, both within those stakeholder groups and then also with the public. So it's really iterative. And then by the time you get to the end of the publication journey, you've got something it's really been tested by a lot of different groups. It's had a lot of input, and it's ready to go out as something that's really fit for purpose.
Brilliant, thank you. And it was published last November, wasn't it? We had the launch event in the Houses of Parliament. So, fantastic event, very powerful event with key stakeholders in the room. So, and even just the fact that so many people, so many organisations have been involved, just goes to show that actually there is an appetite for this. We need to have this, and we've got all of those expertise and insights within it. It's such a powerful document, and we're going to be putting the link to the document in the episode description, so the listeners are able to download that and read it. So thank you for sharing that, Lachie. So with all of those people involved, we've got evidence-based individuals who are bringing those insights in. We've got those you mentioned with the lived experiences. How did we ensure that it was evidence-based, as well as obviously being grounded in the compassion and those lived experiences? I'm not sure who wants to answer that first.
I can have a go first.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you.
I think a large part of it really does come down to the stakeholders involved, I think. And I think, we knew when we had that initial workshop that we weren't going to be necessarily reinventing the wheel with this standard, but we were going to be bringing together best practice that was already out there and making it really practical and really workplace specific. So I think the important thing about the stakeholder mix when we worked on the standard, and although we had a very wide group of stakeholders at the top, we did try and replicate. So it was representative in the drafting panel, even though the drafting panel was much smaller. So we kind of brought together the policy and research and academic and advocacy side of things with businesses, HR expertise, audit expertise, people that could really read something and think this is going to work in practice or this is going to be difficult to implement. So I think that sense check of having those stakeholders come together and work on the document together, that's gone a long way to making sure that it's both evidence-based, but it will be something that works. And then I think the lived experience is key, and we've mentioned it a few times as well, but I would say nearly everyone, if not everyone, brought lived experience to this project, their experience of bereavement or their first-hand experience of a suicide crisis. And that I was just so impressed with so many committee members that joined, and so many people were completely new to working with BSI and joined this brand new committee with a brand new work item, with passion and enthusiasm and complete openness to the standards development process and the concept of working by consensus and going through these iterations and having these, really lengthy discussions and really hard-hitting discussions at points throughout the project. And the level of professionalism and dedication, I think, is really what got it there.
I mean, I really like that comment about the committee and the efforts that they put into that, because the very best standards have a diverse range of people. They have a range of different views that no one individual could ever have brought the massive range of different considerations into the room to help us develop that standard. And by having this a completely different group of people who, yes, all overlap with a common desire to achieve the standard, actually means that you can query what is being said. And I think that's the possibly the best part of what a standard development organization like BSI does, is that it provides the community to have the debate, have the discussion. And yes, they can be heated in some instances, but what it does is that heated debate helps challenge things that are being said, to make sure that they're right and make sure they're going to provide the right words in there. I think also the other part of it is Lachie used the word passion, and to me that's the next best thing that comes together with a standards drafting group is that you have the passion in a subject. And it links back to that word again, better. If the people want to make something better, they will put those efforts into that and bring their intellectual property, bring their ideas, bring their care in a subject matter. And this illustrates it more than any other. I also like the comment, and I have no doubt there are things between the lines in what Lachie says about having a brand new group of people here to do the standard, because they don't know about the intricacies of a requirements document over a guidance document. They just come along wanting to make something better and wanting to share their ideas, and that is really important to actually getting to where we got to with this, because the level of enthusiasm was I haven't experienced that before with standards development. It really was quite incredible, the level of openness and honesty that people brought to the process, and I can almost feel that in the end result. I think that's come out of that.
And even just the language, just reading through the standard, I read it again this week ahead of us meeting today, and even just the language in there is so kind, it's compassionate, it's easy to read, it's not full of jargon, it's just this is what you need to do to get it right, and to make a difference. And
I think, Helen, that's a real indication about the standard itself has myth busters in there, but actually it also helps shatter the myth about what a standard is all about. That a standard isn't just for some deeply technical person to apply in their organization. That this standard has been written for anyone to use. And one of the things that I've loved in talking to different people is that BSI have been working with Heathrow Airport, who are looking at implementing it. They have some fabulous ideas about how they will implement parts of the standard. But at the other end of the spectrum, I had a discussion with a colleague who had read the standard, and they'd used some of the ideas and some of the techniques in the standard to talk to their daughter, who was having quite a few problems at the time. And to me, if you can go from Heathrow Airport to a mum looking after their daughter, and this standard genuinely helps both of those, and goodness knows what else in between, what a fabulous statement to be able to say about how good this standard actually is. Powerful, life-changing conversations happening. Yeah, exactly.
So Lachie, I'm going to come to you then. So we've talked about the standard, and hopefully we've piqued lots of interest in the listeners today, that they're keen to download it and get reading. So what does the standard cover? What are we looking for organisations to implement within their workplaces?
Yeah, so we've talked about in brief already that it's a practical guide, so it's guidance standard. And in a summary, in one sentence, it gives workplaces a voluntary, practical framework to move from, I guess, reactive crisis management around suicide towards proactive suicide prevention, and also compassionate support after a suicide or a suicide attempt. So it's quite broad in what it covers, I would say, and it was important when we were scoping it, and when we were talking about what could be included and what couldn't be included, that we wanted to keep it as concise as possible to make it practical, but it also had to work in context. And in some contexts, there's going to be quite a low level of education coming into it. So it really had to kind of start with context and the business case for addressing suicide, or why, that Marcus has started to mention. And kind of start off with a bit of an education piece. So the introduction covers common myths about suicide, which I think is one thing, as much as Marcus just mentioned. That's something that is applicable not just in workplaces, but everywhere. A really kind of helpful point to start at, and very easy kind of in to start thinking about what are these kind of pervasive misconceptions that we have, maybe without even realizing. So from that introduction, it gets into broadly for workplaces things like organizational culture, your strategy and policy, and then it comes into the three main, I guess, action-based parts of the standard. So prevention, intervention, and support, which is where most of the really practical recommendations sit. It also covers monitoring and evaluation, so of your policy or your actions and how that's working. And then at the back of the document, we have 5 annexes, so A through to E, and they're very practical in their nature. So really designed to support the implementation of the main part of the standard. So they're things like principles for commissioning training, checklists for HR or line managers, some self-evaluation questions, which are a really important part of the standard, I think. But yeah, it's quite. It really takes you through the whole kind of journey when putting something like this into place in your workplace. A few of the, just to kind of pull out a few specific things, because I've spoken quite generally, the things that we get asked about a lot about whether they're included. There's quite a lot of guidance on language, so how to ask directly about suicide, how what kind of phrases are helpful, what's unhelpful, how to respond in a crisis, so when you are at that crisis point or when someone is at a crisis point, but then lots of practical information on the prevention side of things, so things like individual safety plans, how to do them, how they work, why to use them. And then, as I mentioned, commissioning training, things like that. So, yeah, it covers a lot, but we were also mindful that it does have to be usable, as we've said, and it's employer facing. So we were quite deliberate in including things like infographics, tables, a very kind of easy to follow structure, so that you can go to the contents and see where you're going, where you're going to find certain information, everything that we could do to make it as usable as possible. And also, when we published it concurrently, we published a shorter version of the standard. So it's called the Practical First Steps Guide. So that was something that sits alongside the standard. I think it's about 11 pages, but it's really an introduction, potentially for SMEs or potentially for people who are completely new to using standards. It kind of gives you an intro to the why, what the standard covers, how to get started with it before you're ready to go and get into the full standard. And that's also free. So both of them published on the same day, both free.
Brilliant. And we've put the link of that into the episode description as well, because I think firms could probably look at that document. Oh my gosh, it's overwhelming. Where do I even start? So actually, that that implementation guide can often be read the full standard and then look at it with regards to what do we do first? What should be our next steps? So both those links are in the episode descriptions. So thank you. So I shared at the beginning that we've had sort of currently, as we record now, there's been over 9,000 downloads, and I know that you've got some early adapters that have taken it on and they're implementing it within the workplace. It's been a huge success right from launch, really. What would that success continue to look like, say, in 5 years' time, as it becomes more widely adopted? What's the ambition for this standard?
I think there are a couple of things for me. I think just simply doing this kind of thing, Helen, actually, the more people that can understand that the standard even exists, it is the very first thing that we can do. And part of that is helping people understand how incredibly easy it is to get into. We don't want anyone to be daunted by the fact that it's about 50 pages long, because actually, as Lachie has described, there are a number of annexes in there that people can just pull those out and get on and do stuff. An annex for leadership, an annex for HR, a checklist in there. So there's lots of little nuggets in there that can just get people started. The other thing about using the standard is my number one plea would always be just download it, just start it, and pick out what's right for you. As we've described earlier, this standard has got a whole range of different things and solutions around suicide, about prevention, about proactive work, about reactive work as well. Lots of different things in there. So download it, have a look at it, and see what's appropriate for your organization, and just get going. Don't be frightened, because that way you can get more out of it. I think the other thing is just to share it with colleagues as well, to share it with people, because when I've gone out and about and talked about this standard, I'm always amazed the stories that people come to me with and tell me about their personal experiences and what they've been through. And this is at the heart of the standard, because it gives people a license to talk about a subject that they don't think they have a license to talk about. And we want to give those people that opportunity, and then a license to go and sort it out and find solutions for it. So when I think about what I wanted this standard to do in the first instance, and to answer your question about what ambition we have for it, I've kind of gone bigger in my ambition. I want everyone to know about this standard. I want this standard to help us obliterate suicide as an issue. I don't want it just to exist. Having seen how it's evolved, having seen what it does, I want this standard to stop every suicide, not just in the UK, but across the globe. We will look at the idea of taking the standard to become a global standard at some point. We're not going to hurry into that. We'll do it at the right time. But I want its ambition to be limitless. I want everyone to be able to understand that here is a tool that helps them out. Because from my experience, as I mentioned at the outset, I didn't know Adam was feeling the way that he did. No business knows how every one of its workers, its employees, the people that use its services are feeling and what's happening in their life. That it's not just about people's mental health. It's about people's status. It's about their financial position. It's about their family position. So many different stressors can actually cause people to suicidal thoughts. And so the standard says to people, if you use it, if you adopt it, if you actually implement the standard, then you will help all of those people that you don't even know needed help. And that, to me, the more people we can get to do that, to help out, as I say, if we can go about doing this to obliterate the blight that we have in the UK and across the world of suicide, then, let's continue with that ambition.
Love that, Marcus. Absolutely love that.
If I could build on what Marcus said, just with some thoughts about the next few years of the standard. And I think I have that ambition as well. I think the awareness raising part of it is so important, and it's going to keep going. And ideally in the UK, we'd like to see it embedded in every sector so that it becomes the norm and people know it's there and it's something that can be used in the workplace. I think to do that, we obviously need to continue the awareness raising piece, and things like having the standard referenced as good practice in other places is a really key part of that. So when it was published in November, the very same week, the Men's Health Strategy for England published, and the standard was cited as good practice in that, which was incredible that just a couple of days after that came out and it was in it. We've also had interest from local government authorities and local councils in referencing it as part of their good employment or fair employment charters. So Lots of different councils do great work locally on that. So those kind of places, having it referenced, I think is going to be really key, and we're working on it. I guess the other thing that I think is quite important in the next couple of years is making sure that it's working, and we know how it's being used, and that we're recording that and we're getting some data. So BSI, we have a research team here that we have some impact and research work planned for the next 6 to 12 months and beyond with early adopters. And we're really welcoming people to get in touch if they want to work with us on that, on case studies, various other things, surveys, so that we can really build the case for what's working, what's most commonly being used, and build up a picture of how it's being used in the UK. And we have some early adopters already, which Helen, I know you mentioned, but I also wanted to just mention 2 weeks ago we ran a BSI webinar to introduce the standard, and we had 2 early adopters come on as guests. One was Heathrow, who Marcus mentioned before, already using the standard, and another was an SME called Inclusion Education. And they shared so much insight on how they've started using the standard, some really practical, honest feedback about what they've done in their organizations, from kind of starting with their gap analysis and what's the first actions they've taken and what they expect to do and what kind of time frame. So I think for anyone listening that's interested in early adoption, that webinar is available on the BSI website. You can watch it back. I'll put the link in for Helen to put with the podcast as well. So yes, please do go and watch that and get in contact with us if it's of interest. But as many early adopters and case studies as possible is kind of our aim.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to hear in practice how firms are putting it into being is great. So yeah, again, we'll put that webinar link into the episode description. So yeah, absolutely. Lots of links for people to use following the session today. So thank you. Marcus, I want to pick up, you mentioned around the stresses that people may be experiencing that may lead them to consider taking their life. And I know that there's some valuable information in the standard around, what those stresses might be. Also, as well, there's some lists of indicators as well, so how we might identify somebody as perhaps moving towards crisis. Appreciate that we've obviously focused on the standard today, but actually thinking about people who might be listening, who might be struggling themselves with these thoughts and moving towards crisis. What would you want them to hear today?
The number one thing is that there are solutions there for people who are having those kind of issues. That it's a dreadful cliche, but sometimes the cliches are the best things, actually, that they are not alone. There are people there who can help them. And there are a ton of really positive organizations that can help people out. And I think people who are maybe struggling, just to know that there are people there that can help them out, I think is the number one thing. So people should always try and seek that out. And I know that's sometimes difficult to do, to again make that first step. And maybe the message from this in particular about the standard is one of, there are a bunch of people who really care about trying to address this. And if people who are struggling can find those people, then they will get fabulous help. And I think that will be the number one thing, that there is none of us can ever understand 100% what people are going through, but rest assured there are people who will help. If people can find those people, then reach out to them, lean on them, and see what can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will share some support services links in the episode description as well. So that's for those individuals as well who need those support. But there are so many people that care and want to help and make a difference. So yeah, it's reaching out for that support. Absolutely. So I'm conscious we've covered so much today, and it's just, we can probably talk about the standard for hours, but it's such a powerful standard. It's such a straightforward standard to implement, and we really do want to encourage people to get that downloaded. First step, as you keep saying, Marcus, just get it downloaded, and then move from there. So thank you so much for joining. Are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share with the listeners today, either about the standard or about sort of suicide prevention, support? What are your final thoughts to share with everyone today? Marcus, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, I've just got one, and that is, look at the URL that you provided in this podcast, QR code or whatever it is. Just download the standard, open it up, share it with people, and get going. I think that's the thing. I can't think of any better words than the brilliant words that Lachie and the BSI team got out of the drafting panel and wrote in that standard. Just get it and get started.
Love that call to action, Marcus. Thank you. Lachie, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. Mine's kind of similar to Marcus, I think, but I've got some good words that I'll quote from the suicide prevention strategy for England, which they say at the top of that strategy that suicide is everyone's business. And I think, just to return to what Marcus said at the start about the publication of this standard being a huge step, just the fact that it exists as a workplace standard. And I think the positive reception across so many sectors, how many people are already speaking about it, sharing it, willing to endorse it or adopt it, sending it to their HR departments. That's already sent a really striking message to workplaces that there is something that can be done in organizations. And every day that an organization spends using something like this standard and breaking the stigma is another door open for someone to seek the support they need. So yeah, join us, keep doing that. I think is my final thought.
It's everybody's business. Absolutely powerful words to finish on. So thank you so much, and thank you so much both of you for all the work that you've done in bringing this standard to life, and for joining me today. So thank you.
That's a pleasure, Helen. Thanks very much. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about it more. The more people that we can get to understand it, the better. So thank you.
Thank you, Helen. It's been great.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us today. If you've been touched by the topic that we have discussed today, please reach out for support. There are support service contact details in the episode description, which provide a safe place for you to talk and to feel listened to. Take care. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Unlocking Vulnerability. If today's conversation has resonated with you, please feel free to share it with others who may find it useful. You'll find more episodes like this by searching Unlocking Vulnerability wherever you listen to podcasts. If this episode has left you with questions about any aspect of consumer vulnerability, I regularly host free Q&A sessions on Zoom where you're welcome to join the conversation. You can find out more at helenpettifer.com. Thank you for listening, and please take care.